What's going on, FPL managers? Welcome back to another Fantasy Football Scout video here on our YouTube channel with me, Lee, and this is Sam from FPL Family. Now, Sam, this video is all about top picks, the top 5 picks, one in each position, and a random curveball that you've thrown in right at the end for the upcoming Double Game Week 26. Unless you've been living under a rock, guys, you will know, we both know, the big Double Game Week is here. This is the game we have been preparing for a number of weeks already, and some of us will be thinking about playing chips as well. So I'm going to ask you a bit at the end about potentially your chip strategy if we've got time. But the main reason for this video is to go position by position on who is your key player, who is your absolute must-have per position, and then I'm going to hear at the end about this curveball. So we're going to start with the goalkeepers, and of course, a favourite that a lot of you will have, Emi Martinez. No real reason to go against this pick, I don't think. If you've got him, I think you play him. You don't have him, nor do I. How do we feel about going into Double Game Week 26 without him?
I think it's getting to a point, isn't it, with Martinez, where 37% of the game own him. If you don't own him, every single week he hurts when you don't, because even if he doesn't get a clean sheet, he's making save after save after save, and it ratchets up on those save points. But the majority of the time, he is keeping a clean sheet. Now, the fixtures look okay for the Double Game Week. Obviously, they've got Leeds at the weekend, and we've just watched Leeds play particularly well in the second half of their match, in the second part of Double Game Week 25 against Southampton. So that might be a difficult game to keep.
You'd back Leeds to score, though, wouldn't you?
But equally, Leeds will have a lot of shots, and a lot of shots means a lot of potential save points for Martinez. So even if the clean sheet goes in that game, I think there's still an opportunity there for some save points for him.
Of course.
And then following on from that, I think there's definitely potential for a clean sheet in the second game.
Yeah, so we're talking probably a 6 against Sheffield United. Probably going to top that up with 2 or 3 points against Leeds. So we're talking about maybe a minimum of 9, I would suggest.
Yeah.
And I also think that actually without Grealish and without some of their other key players in that Villa side, I don't see them scoring a ton of goals. So if they are going to keep the clean sheet against Southampton, and if they're going to get the win in either of these two games, I don't back there to be tons of goals from Aston Villa. And because of that, he might step into the bonus points as well.
I think this could end up being similar to the Brighton game from a Aston Villa point of view, in that Martinez kept them in that game, didn't he? At a time when they weren't at their best, he was definitely at his best, and I can see him doing well in that second game. But in this first one, I think Leeds will go and attack, and without Matt Cash, they'll need Martinez, and therefore I think the save points will be there. So we could be talking about a 9-10 point haul again for Martinez this week. And I think when you look at the other goalkeepers that are playing twice this week, obviously there's some out there like the likes of Edison, for example, who've got 2 really nice fixtures and looks good. The same with Lloris, maybe at Spurs, 2 nice fixtures, looks good. But you've got to pay more for those guys than you have for Martinez. And at a time where, we're trying to work towards 29 as well for a lot of managers, trying to fit players in for the future as well as just for this week, Martinez hits that tick box as well, because he plays in game week 29. And
some nice fixtures between the double and 29 as well. So he solves a lot of problems for you, Martinez. So if you've got him, absolutely keep him. And if you haven't got him like we have, considering transferring him in this week. I'm considering a boring goalkeeper transfer this week, Sam, I have to say, because Martinez is hurting my rank every time he gets points. And I would back him to get a double-digit haul in the next game week. So let's move on to the defence, and another player who I think has got to be in the conversation for Player of the Year. Across the Premier League, I think he's in the conversation. But for Man City, it's between him and Gundogan for me for Player of the Year. He has made a massive difference at Man City. And even in that previous game against Arsenal, which we watched a couple of days ago, City, they never really looked troubled, did they? They never really do look troubled at all right now with him at the back. He's so calm, and he's having a great impact, isn't he, on the rest of that defence, including the likes of the formerly fairly, I wouldn't call him erratic, but a little bit inconsistent Zinchenko, and even John Stones. And a lot has come, I think, internally from John Stones, but it's got to help him playing along this side. Ruben Diaz for the double, 2 home games for Manchester City. You just play him, don't you?
Absolutely. And the reason I picked Diaz over one of the other Man City defenders, because let's be honest, it's to take your pick, isn't it? There's so many good assets. I could of course picked Cancelo or John Stones, you've already mentioned.
Cancelo's played a lot of games consecutively now. I'd be interested to see Pep's lineup for that first leg against Borussia Mönchengladbach. because that will give us some indication as to who might play in these doubles, I think.
Yeah, and obviously we're recording this prior to Man City's Champions League game on Wednesday evening. It's impossible to know, as always is the case with Pep, what he's planning to do each week. But Manchester City are in a run of a lot of games, particularly obviously with the confirmation that we had this game in 26, followed by another double game week in 27. So there's good chances of rotation across Man City, and I think at the back there are ready-made replacements for a number of his key defenders. But Diaz is the one that seems to be that ever-present linchpin of the defence, and I think going into double game weeks where there should be easily 2 clean sheets available, owning Diaz, who you feel is the most secure pick in that Man City defence in terms of starts and surety of them, feels like a really important pick. So if you own Cancelo and Stones, it's difficult obviously because you don't really want a sideways move across. But if you don't own 3 Man City players and one of the 2 you do own isn't Diaz, I would be recommending that you go for him. I think his safety of starts is probably the highest amongst the defence.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, the 2 games they've got, West Ham at home and Wolves at home, especially around the Champions League, they smell to me a bit like games that Man City have seen out, if you know what I mean, previously in this season, which by that I mean, I don't see, again, City going big in these games. I see them doing maybe what they did to Arsenal, what they've done to a lot of teams this season, which is they go 1 up, maybe 2, but they just then control the game. And then if West Ham did score or Wolves did score, okay, well, they ratchet it up and they go and they find that extra gear that they've got. They've got that in their locker. But I foresee both. Would not surprise me, would not shock me to see, a couple of 1-0s here to Man City. Just get the points and move on. And if they do that, we know, based on, well, I've been a Diaz owner for a few weeks now, I don't remember a game where they've had a clean sheet and he's not got at least a bonus point because he picks up the clearances, sometimes the blocks as well. His pass completion rate is good because he just picks up the ball, gives it and goes, and it's just, the pass completion rate is insane for him at the back, the way that they dictate the ball from those areas. So it would not surprise me to see narrow Man City wins. Part of the reason I'm wavering a bit away from Gundogan for my captaincy for this week, more on that potentially in another video, but Diaz, to me, I think has got the potential to get a couple of 7s at least here.
Yeah, I agree.
14 points in the double game week. You're going to take it. You're absolutely going to take it. So Diaz locked in for me. Another player that I am heavily considering for double game week 26 is Harvey Barnes.
Yeah.
Now, if you look back through just, forget all the XG and all that sort of stuff, just raw FPL points, I think he's blanked in sort of like 3 or 4 of the last, 10 games or something. He's ticked over. But then in the last 2 game weeks, 2 double-digit hauls back to back, and he's just exploded onto everyone's radar just at the right time. Now, the Leicester fixtures, as you can see, they're Arsenal at home, Burnley away. 2 games where I think, frankly, there's points for all of the Leicester assets. The one to watch, for me, James Maddison. I think he makes them tick. Maybe he's got a bit of a knock going into that Arsenal game. One to keep an eye on. Yeah. But even without James Maddison, with Vardy now a couple of games under his belt since coming back from injury, Barnes looks great, doesn't he? And actually, without Maddison, they're probably going to rely on Barnes to be a bit more direct.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this midfield spot is a tough one to choose a key player for because obviously, you end up falling into the same category as the likes of Gundogan, who you've already mentioned, who also looks great for this game.
There's a lot of players you could have picked it, to be fair.
There's Bruno Fernandes, of course, who's been great. But Harvey Barnes has been a real standout over the last couple of weeks. And I think, everybody the whole chatter about the FPL community is Gundogan and Bruno and captaincy. Harvey Barnes is one of those players that if you've got a space in your midfield that you don't yet have a double game week in and you're just thinking about, replacing them, maybe you've got Souček and you think, I fancy a bit of a double game week swap there.
Got to find a bit of money to do that, though. There's a couple of million between those two.
You've got to find some money to do it, but a lot of managers have got some money to do it.
That's true, yes.
And at that point, you're looking at a real differential in Harvey Barnes, and I think he could be a differential that's worth taking a chance on. Arsenal are on a bit of a roller coaster at the moment. Some weeks you watch them, they look really good. The next week they don't. They just don't. You never really know what Arsenal you're going to get. So that game I think could go either way. Burnley, we've seen, again, they've been a little bit hit and miss of late. Sometimes, they look okay and they're solid at the back, but then at other times
I fancy Leicester more in that Arsenal game than against Burnley. Burnley can shut up shop. They very rarely get battered, but Arsenal, and we know what Vardy's record is like against Arsenal, they will be fearful of him. And they won't like the directness of Harvey Barnes.
No, they won't.
His ownership, Barnes, by the way, 12.6%. So, okay, not in super differential, but still.
But for the game week, he will be a differential
Totally.
in terms of what most people are going for. So if you're free hitting this week, I think Harvey Barnes looks like a perfect option. If you're wildcarding, he looks like a good option for this week because you can keep him longer term because he is in a nice run of form. And as you say, Leicester, with the exception of James Justin, they're starting to get their players back again from injury. We've seen Pereira return, we've seen Vardy return. Let's see what happens with Maddison, obviously over the next couple of days before game week 26. But Leicester are in good form. They have something to fight for. And I think what happened at the end of last season with losing out in the way that they
It'll motivate them, right?
That will encourage them to keep playing at the kind of tempo and the pace that they have been in the last couple of weeks. So
that midfield too have been so impressive for me. Tielemans and Ndidi, I would go as far as to say they are, I think, the in-form, if not, would I say the best? I think I would say the best midfield two right now in the Premier League. I think they're absolutely fantastic. And they allow, if you're Harvey Barnes, you're looking at those two saying, I'm safe here.
Yeah.
I can go and be direct. I can go and do what the manager's asking me to do. Because I know if I make a mistake or for whatever reason I'm direct and I lose the ball, I'm okay because I've got my two mates there covering. I think those two guys are enabling the likes of Barnes and Maddison to go do what they do. So like we say, 12.6% owned. The games coming out into 27 and 28 for Leicester are Brighton and Sheffield United, particularly Sheffield United at home in that game week 28. Of course, they don't have a game in 29, so you've got to think about that in terms of how you manage your Leicester assets, but certainly a double game week, a reasonable looking double game week, followed by Brighton and then Sheffield United.
Yeah.
It's a good time to get Harvey Barnes.
I mean, this isn't, you could throw Rashford into this conversation as well here because, it could be a good week to get Rashford as well, given the fixtures that Man United have. But coming out of game week 26, they go into a match against Manchester City, which you wouldn't really fancy so much. Whereas so it kind of feels like you would be transferring somebody in, only to transfer them out again at the end of that game week. Whereas with the likes of Barnes, you can keep them for a few weeks up until game week 29 when they blank, depending upon your strategy for that game week.
Okay. In the England conversation, Harvey Barnes?
Well, this England conversation keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
There's a lot of competition for his place.
Performing.
No doubt about it. A lot of competition for his space. Speaking of England conversation, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, a player that you transferred out a couple of weeks ago,
last week,
suddenly found a bit of form at Anfield. I don't know how much of that was to do with the malaise at Liverpool, which is a whole nother video I don't even want to think about recording. But he came on. I wouldn't say he was rested. I think Ancelotti was maybe being cautious with him because he's just come back from injury. Came on, looked pretty lively. Obviously won the penalty.
Lucky penalty.
A bit of a lucky penalty, but that's VAR. It's a whole other conversation. Southampton at home, West Brom away. Saints who have just been beaten by Leeds 3-0. Looked a little bit toothless in attack. Looked a bit vulnerable at the back as well. And then West Brom, of course, who, if you look at all of the underlying stats, I'm afraid they are the Leeds whipping boys, no doubt about it. Have improved a little bit recently, but it's all relative, right? They still concede a lot of goals. So Dominic Calvert-Lewin, whisper it quietly, is getting a lot of talk about captaincy / triple captaincy for double game week 26. How do you feel as a non-owner?
Well, I replaced him with Harry Kane. So I'm not exactly... I did that on the basis that I knew roughly what was coming.
Yet you chose to put Calvert-Lewin in this video and not Harry Kane as the essential forward pick.
Well, I think the other thing is that, for a lot of managers, Harry Kane is much like Bruno Fernandes at the moment. They are conversations which it's almost like, well, you expect managers, probably engaged managers, will have already thought about, well, I want Kane because of this. Now, for a lot of, it comes down between a straight choice, I think, between the two of them. Now, if you can have both, I think they make for a perfect partnership for this week.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to choose between them because on paper, Spurs have the nicer fixtures. But the reality is the form of Southampton and West Brom at the moment probably means that Everton, in reality, have the slightly easier fixtures.
Not great form themselves, though, Everton,
But
except for that game outside their Merseyside derby. Before that, not in great form. So are we rushing to Calvert-Lewin on the back of a performance against, frankly, a pretty bad Liverpool side?
I mean, I think the return that he got against Liverpool was lucky. In terms of it's a lucky assist for a penalty that, well, we'll see. You make your own judgment about whether it was or not. But otherwise, I thought he looked lively coming back, but then it's a derby, you're going to look lively, and he only played for the end of the match, so not exactly putting a lot of strain on his body. Is he physically capable of playing 2 games? I would think so.
Yeah, I would think so.
I think he's back because he's fit, so I don't think there's any worry about him not playing in both the matches. But I do worry a little bit about Calvert-Lewin in terms of the rest of the Everton team need to perform for him to perform.
Okay.
And we saw that earlier on in the season, that when the likes of James Rodriguez and Richarlison and particularly Luca Digne are in good form, the balls that they put into Calvert-Lewin are significantly better, and therefore he performs better. When they were injured or suspended in the earlier part or the latter part of the season, he tailed off a little bit. So their form has been a bit mixed. They are going to come up against 2 sides that really do need to win some games. But I do think he looks like a really nice option.
I don't know how many games you think West Brom are going to win. They are dead and buried, and the Saints look
well, they've got to start winning some.
Out of form. Ideal front 3, if you were to pick a front 3 for this game week, would he be in it? I assume Harry Kane would be.
Harry Kane, yeah. I think he would be in it in reality.
With Ollie Watkins as your third, potentially?
And probably with, Ollie Watkins or potentially even Bamford.
With a single game week?
Yeah, I think, you can never overlook Bamford, particularly with the way Rafinha's playing at the minute, and the quality of the passes and stuff that are coming in. There's always potential there. Watkins, I worry a little bit about if Grealish isn't there.
Okay, all right. I think I'd maybe go Vardy as well. Maybe have a shout for.
It's an expensive front three.
Shout out for Vardy. It's an expensive front 3, and you can't have them all, guys. You can't have a Salah and a Fernandes and a Son, etc. in the middle with those front 3. So there we go. There's your goalkeeper, defender, midfielder, and forward. Now, here's your curveball.
Okay.
And I have to tell you at this stage, guys, this is Sam's decision to put this gentleman in. On the back of one good half of football.
2 good games.
Gareth Bale
2 good games.
is suddenly on your radar for Double Game Week 26. Please talk me through this one. What is going on?
Had a really fantastic performance against Wolfsburg in the Europa League.
He did fine, yeah.
Now, I understand that, of course, it's against Wolfsburg. However, did I say the Champions League? I meant to say the Europa League.
Yeah.
Freudian slip. It was fantastic. And I think the confidence in him, there's been a lot of chatter from him as well about how he feels his fitness is back. He's able to get through whole training sessions now, whereas he wasn't previously.
Okay. It's only taken him 5 months as well, to be fair. Came
on against West Ham, and even you can't be flippant about this. He fundamentally changed Spurs in
he was good.
Game.
He was all right. He played well.
Came on at half-time, made such a difference. And one of the things that I noticed in the game against West Ham was the change that it meant for Harry Kane. Because Harry Kane no longer dropped deep. He stayed up in that forward 9 position, which meant that he was getting a lot more opportunities. He had more opportunities in that second half than I'd seen him have over a few weeks previous. And was unlucky not to get a goal late on in that game with that off the bar attempt from a Harry Kane cross.
That was a worldy effort, that, by the way.
It was.
But again, that was a low XG chance, right?
It's not as if
he's in and around the area having loads of touches in the box, loads of shots on target.
But
it wasn't really, good performance, but underlying stats didn't really suggest to me that there's an FPL haul on the horizon.
No, but on set pieces, he'll take free kicks. He's on corners from that side of the pitch. I think what swings it for me is the fixtures and the form that Spurs are in. Spurs are in desperate need of a change of luck and a change of fortune because they're in dire straits right now. And when
we wouldn't mind a bit of that at Anfield, by the way.
You can't have Gareth Bale. And when he came on, he did change the morale, the kind of the whole team changed. Now I suspect that we won't get 2 knots of 90 minutes across these 2 matches. I suspect that he will start in one and he will probably either start and go off early in the other one or come off the bench in the other one.
Talk me through these fixtures then. So you're saying, okay, so the fixtures appeal to you. Burnley at home, I mean, Burnley, as we've just suggested, don't get battered, right? They're a solid side, known for their defensive quality. Certainly, I don't remember ever seeing a Sean Dyche side leave space in behind in the way that Bale and others could exploit, and the way that Mourinho likes to counter-attack. Don't see Burnley setting up in a way that really plays into that. And then, of course, Fulham, different side all of a sudden over the last few game weeks. Very, very good indeed. So it's not, on paper that looks good, but that's 2 tricky little games for Spurs, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Bale's only played 1 game against Burnley in the Premier League and he scored in that game. Actually, Spurs have got particularly good records against Burnley and Fulham. Harry Kane, for example, has played in 14 games combined against these two sides. He scored 14 goals and got 3 assists in that time period. So that's averaging a goal and, at least a goal every game. I suspect that we will see a bit more of an attacking-minded Spurs team across this game week. Burnley, I wasn't impressed by them last week. I think that they were lucky actually to have that West Brom sending off happen. Otherwise,
led a charmed life, didn't it? That Burnley goal.
So,
although they're not used to having the ball, are they? They didn't know what to do in that scenario against a 10-man West Brom. They kind of like, oh, we've got the ball. What do we do with it? And it affected their shape and their dynamic against Spurs. I think they're the perfect side to frustrate you. I really do.
We'll find out.
I might be wrong, guys. Let us know what you think.
Gareth Bale holds.
In the comments below. 0.3% own Gareth Bale. So there's one thing I do agree with you on, and that is he is uber differential. If you really want to climb those mini leagues, show a bit of faith in the Welshman, and he will rocket you up if he comes up with the goods. Let us know what you think below, guys. Who would be your key picks in defence, midfield, and forward? And who's your wild card pick? Is it Gareth Bale? I don't know.
Who would yours have been?
It's not Gareth Bale. I'll put it out there. Let us know who your picks would be for Double Game Week 26, and post your teams in the comments below as well, so we know who the popular picks are. I want to know what you're thinking ahead of the big Double Game Week coming up just this weekend. Leave us a like before you go, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you're new to the Fantasy Football Scout YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button and the notify bell, and we'll see you on the other side of Double Game Week 26. Cheers, guys.
Bye, guys.